While the legal lines between abortion rights and restrictions continue to blur, I am joined by 3 abortion survivors who are here to share their amazing, incredible personal stories. We have Melissa Oden, who is on the end, founder of the Abortion Survivors Network. We have Josiah Presley in the middle, and then Claire Colwell over here sitting next to me. We've been talking during the commercial break. Their stories are just phenomenal. We'll start on the end. If you'll just tell us what happened, how you found out about your life story.
I was actually 14 when I found out my story. I'm adopted, have been blessed with an amazing family. Knew I had been born prematurely, but yeah, here I was 14 years old to have my own adoptive mother tell me, you know, Missy, you survived an abortion. It was absolutely devastating.
And then you found your mom later. And
yes, it's been a lifelong journey. I started looking for my birth mother when I was 19, didn't find her until I was almost 30.
And she didn't know you survived?
She didn't.
How is that possible?
She was told that day, it's a monster, it's hideous, don't look at it. She didn't know if it had been a little boy or a little girl delivered in that final step of the saline infusion abortion. And she had lived with such incredible regret, as you can imagine. So I've been blessed to be united with her. We first started communicating about 6 years ago, and now she's one of the greatest supports alongside my family.
Wow, that's incredible. Josiah, tell us your story.
Yeah, so I was adopted from South Korea into a family of 12 kids. And when I was 13, my adopted parents, they sat me down and they told me about how my birth mother actually had a curettage abortion when she was 2 months pregnant with me. And a curettage abortion is a type of abortion where the doctor goes into the mother's womb and basically rips the baby apart and brings them out in pieces. And that's actually why we think I'm probably missing an arm today. And so she had the procedure at 2 months, and then at 5 months realized that I was still alive, that the abortion had failed. And at that point, I was born later on October 7th, 1995, and I was placed with an adoption agency and lived in a foster home for about a year before I came over to the States to live with the family I've grown up with.
Wow. Now, Claire, your mother had an abortion, but you survived. How is that possible?
I did. So my birth mother was 13 years old when she found out she was pregnant with me. She was in 8th grade, and her mother said that she wasn't ready to be a mother, and so she took her to a local abortion clinic, and she had a DNC surgical late-term abortion at 5 months along in her pregnancy, and they told her that her life would go back to normal, but a few weeks went by and things weren't getting back to normal, and she went back and they told her that her abortion had been successful, but that she was still pregnant, and one of the twins that she didn't know she was pregnant with had survived. And so she actually sought out a second late-term abortion in Kansas, but because of the risk of infection, they weren't able to do that. And so I was born 6 weeks later.
And you also have met your biological mother.
I did. I actually didn't find this out until I met my biological mother. I had a lot of physical complications growing up. I was in body casts for 2 years because I had dislocated hips and club feet from the abortion procedure, and we didn't know why until I met my birth mother and found out about her abortion.
I want to play a soundbite. You probably all heard it. The governor of Virginia. Listen to this.
If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
So, Josiah, if your mother lived in Virginia and you were born and she didn't want you and she tried to have an abortion, she still could decide to take your life after birth. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's really sad to hear that, but it's not surprising to hear that when we live in a country that has arbitrary criteria for what defines personhood. And so abortion's legal in the first trimester, the second trimester. I mean, the next step is, why not the third trimester? Why not right after they're born? And so this brings to mind, this reminds us just the reality that people are people at conception, and that we should care about their personhood then at conception, not after they're born, because this is what we're left with when we have those kind of arbitrary criteria for personhood.
Yeah, as I look at all of you, just thanking God that he spared your lives. When you watch the women cheer behind Andrew Cuomo in New York when he signs the legislation that you can have an abortion up until the very last second, and you see the World Trade Center lit up in pink, what's your reaction?
It's shocking to me that people no longer in our country care about what is true and right. We know that a baby is what is in the side of the mother's womb based on medical technology and science. And so we just hope that, because people can see our faces and see that we are people, we are human, we do grow up to be someone someday, that people will realize that those women do not speak for women like me. And so I would ask those people, where were my rights as a woman? What were my rights in the womb?
Melissa, you were not supposed to live. And here you are living. You're a public speaker, and you go out and you give life and redemption to a lot of women all over the country. What's your message to people who are having to make a decision? And what's your message to those governors that have signed this legislation?
For those governors, I would say, kind of echoing Claire's sentiments, this is a human rights issue. And in a world that decries women's rights, where were Claire's rights? Where were mine? Where are the rights of those little girls who are going to have their lives ended by abortion today? Without the right to life, there is no other right that comes. And for someone who's facing that decision about an abortion, I want people to know that they're not alone. So many women are coerced, forced, don't know what resources exist for them in their communities. Maybe you're completely unsupported. And so I want women to know there are resources available in every community. They can always contact any of us. You're never alone.
I love to honor the parents that adopted, all three of you, and all of my friends that, anyone who's adopted a child. I have a friend who adopted a little girl, and she said, I hate it when people say I'm the adoptive parent. I want to be the parent. She does have a biological parent, but I am the mom. So tell us your story about your about your parents. I'm making the same mistake. Jose, I'll start with you. Tell us about the family that brought you into their home.
Yeah, so I'm actually the son of a pastor of worship at a Southern Baptist church in Oklahoma. And so my parents, they have 12 kids, but they've adopted 10 of us. And what has caused them to adopt us is the gospel, the fact that they've been changed by God to love others, and his work in their life then causes them to love those around them, and then gives them the pro-life conviction to then want to take in these children and make us their own. Just as God has made them his children, they make us their children.
Claire, how about yours?
I was adopted by a couple that weren't able to have children naturally. And so I also have a sister who's adopted, and they just said that when they went to the doctors, there was a 1% chance of them having children naturally. And so they knew that the other way to have children was through adoption. And so God created our family. And I owe my parents so much credit for the way I was able to respond to my birth mother when she told me, because they raised me on love and grace and forgiveness. And so all three of us have forgiven our birth mothers because we know that they had no idea what they were getting into when they had an abortion. And so there is so much hope and healing after abortion.
Yeah, it's not about condemnation. It's just, when we hear your stories, it's just amazing how God has huge plans for all of y'all when you weren't even supposed to be here. It's incredible. And we'll end this with your story about your parents.
Yeah, my mom and dad were a lot like Claire. So my parents struggled with infertility for about 15 years. They were foster parents. They adopted my older sister from another family, and then they adopted me no matter what they were told my life was going to look like, that I might not live for long, that I might face multiple disabilities.
And look at you. You're perfect.
That's the power of love. That's what I like to tell people, right? This is what love does. It saves lives. It brings us to life. And after 15 years of infertility, my parents had a biological child of their own.
Wow. Wow. I hear that a lot. Our assistant here, her parents were told they couldn't have kids. They went down to South Carolina, adopted a child. She found out on that trip that she was pregnant with twins. 3 little ones all at once. So it's pretty cool. And today is her birthday, and she's right over there. We love you, Elizabeth. Okay, thank y'all all so much. Powerful, powerful stories. And because God spared your lives, there are 5 kids in between y'all. You haven't had children yet, but you have 2, no, you have 3, and then Missy, you have 2. So it's awesome. God bless you.